U.S. negotiators led by Steve Witkoff met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow for marathon overnight talks on ending Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Zelenskyy slammed Europe for its inaction in his Davos address, calling it a lost continent after holding private talks with Trump on the sidelines prior.
U.S. negotiators led by Steve Witkoff met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow for marathon overnight talks on ending Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine that lasted well into Friday morning. Kremlin diplomatic advisor Yuri Ushakov told reporters their discussions had been useful, as the Kremlin insisted that the territorial issue needs to be resolved to reach a peace deal.
Главное, что в ходе этих переговоров нашего президента с американцами было вновь констатировано, что без решения территориального вопроса по согласованной в Анкоридже формуле рассчитывать на достижение долгосрочного урегулирования не стоит.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump said that both Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy want to reach a deal. Trump had met with Zelenskyy earlier on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos.
They'll make concessions. Everybody's making concessions to get it done. Europe is going to be a part of it. It's going to be a part of it. It's more for Europe than for me. I mean, I'm doing this more for Europe than for me. I'm doing it to save lives, number one. I'm doing it secondarily for Europe. I'm not doing it so much for the U.S. It doesn't affect us very much.
The Kremlin confirmed that trilateral meetings involving the U.S., Ukraine, and Russia are due to begin Friday in the United Arab Emirates.
EU leaders are reflecting on a week of crisis, which ended with the hard reality that transatlantic relations are now shattered. Heads of state and government met for an emergency summit in Brussels, initially planned as a format for the EU to decide how best to proceed, following Trump's announcement he was imposing tariffs on 7 EU countries and the UK. The 11th hour back down on the tariffs meant the agenda shifted to other matters, such as plans to better integrate Ukraine into the EU and Trump's so-called Gaza Peace Board. But the Trump administration's hostility to America's allies loomed large over the meeting, and Europe agrees it needs to accelerate its independence away from the US.
We know that we have to work more and more for an independent Europe. This is not something which happened overnight. This is hard work. And the main ingredients, the main topics to work on for an independent Europe is economic power and the security infrastructure that is necessary.
EU leaders also discussed the recently signed Mercosur trade deal. Earlier this week, the European Parliament voted to test the legality of the deal by sending it to the European Court of Justice, which will delay its official rollout. But leaders agree on provisionally implementing the deal while they await a judgment from the EU's top court. All they need is the countries of Latin America now to be ready.
A decision would only be needed at a stage when one country of Mercosur or more countries of Mercosur have completed their procedures, are basically ready. So in short, we will be ready when they are ready.
The decision by US President Donald Trump to back down on imposing tariffs in relation to forcing Denmark to give up Greenland is indeed a welcome one. But it doesn't now shake the reality that one of the most important, effective and reliable global partnerships in the world is essentially no more. All trust is eroded. We'll see what happens next. Shona Murray, Euronews, Brussels.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy slammed Europe in his address to the World Economic Forum in Davos for their inaction, describing it as a lost continent. In his scathing critique, Zelenskyy says Europe is stuck in an endless cycle of failing to defend itself or decisively supporting Ukraine, likening the situation to the US film Groundhog Day.
What about the ceasefire itself? Who can help make it happen? Europe loves to discuss the future but avoids taking action today, action that defines what kind of future we will have. That is the problem. Why can't President Trump stop tankers from the Strait of Fleet and seize oil, but Europe doesn't? Russian oil is being transported right along European shores. That oil funds the war against Ukraine. That oil helps destabilize Europe. So Russian oil must be stopped and confiscated and sold for Europe's benefit. Why not?
His address followed a private meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump to discuss the latest on the ground and ongoing peace efforts.
I think the meeting was good. Look, we have a ways to go. They're meeting with President Putin today, as you know. The meeting was good with President Zelenskyy. We'll see how it turns out. A lot of people being killed.
Both leaders did not detail what they spoke about, but said the talks were very good and productive. Separately, Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff is holding talks with a Russian delegation and says he hopes they will yield some progress. A trilateral meeting involving representatives from Ukraine, Russia, and the U.S. is set to take place in the UAE on Friday. Several news agencies reported President Zelenskyy announcing.
But of course, in the interest of
As Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy prepares to meet his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Russian attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure continue. About 4,000 buildings in Kyiv lacked heat on Wednesday, and nearly 60% of the Ukrainian capital was without power. CEO of Ukraine's largest energy provider, Maxim Timchenko, is in Davos and spoke to Euronews about what an energy ceasefire can mean for Ukrainians.
We passed 3 winters and we'll pass 4th winter during the war. But the question is at what price, at what level of sufferings of our people. So situation is extremely difficult. We need support, we need help, and that's the reason why we have a lot of meetings here with energy companies and with other stakeholders who can support us in this emergency situation. And now we are in survival mode. Actually we live in every day, every week to go through this winter season.
Timchenko also urged other countries to see Ukraine as an example of just how critical it is to protect energy infrastructure. Russian barrages have hit power plants and large substations, and procuring replacement equipment such as transformers can take months.
This level of destruction's never been seen for the energy system as we have in Ukraine, not in the modern history. That's why it's difficult to understand, not even general public, but even for energy specialists, for CEOs. Today in the morning I have a meeting with CEOs of the global largest energy companies, and I was telling, this is the situation in Ukraine, and you need to start thinking now how you can protect your critical infrastructure, how you can protect your power stations, because situation is such an vulnerable in the world.
With temperatures falling as low as minus 20 degrees in Kyiv, Ukraine is seeing one of the coldest winters in years, deepening the hardship of Ukrainians almost 4 years after Russia launched its full-scale invasion.
Euronews caught up with the European Union's Commissioner for Enlargement at the World Economic Forum in Davos, where Ukraine's EU membership bid is sitting high on the agenda. The commissioner said she's attending the event to hold important meetings on the redevelopment of Ukraine, including with private U.S. firms like BlackRock, to discuss what is often an under-discussed issue when it comes to the war in Ukraine.
And economic development. We can only be successful if we will bring private capital. But we will not be able to bring private capital in if we will not make the conditions, the business conditions, so that the investors will feel safe.
And BlackRock is a big name. BlackRock can change things.
Indeed, and the European Union is not enough. State money or EU money is not enough. We desperately need also private engagement. And out of the talks I have had until now in Davos, I can see the interest is very big. But of course, everybody would like to end the war as soon as possible.
In many ways, not credible.
Koss was also asked to comment on speculations that Ukraine is being offered an expedited process into the bloc, with some reports suggesting it could happen as early as 2030.
We have a big challenge, and it is great what you ask, a big challenge how to gap the time we have and the challenges or I wouldn't say quick membership, but we are still using the methodology which was used basically when your country, Spain, 40 years back became a member of the European Union. So how can we change not perhaps also the methodology, we'll have to speak about this, but how can we bring the countries who are indispensable for the European security and also prosperity in the European Union, in the sense that it will make us stronger, EU, and not weaker. Saying that
the Enlargement Commissioner also said she hoped the EU will adapt its processes to facilitate quicker memberships, which would be in line with the rapidly changing geopolitical climate. Summing up her argument, Kos concluded that an EU with stronger enlargement protocols is an independent EU that is better prepared to face today's and tomorrow's challenges.
A pleasure.
The Museum of Resistance, or Museum of Jihad, is once again open in Herat, Afghanistan, but with changes made by the Taliban. The museum is dedicated to the Mujahideen who resisted the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in the 1980s. It was in Herat in March 1979 that a rally against the pro-Soviet leadership of Afghanistan took place, which is considered the beginning of organized resistance. The museum was built in 2010 and quickly became a city landmark. Under Taliban rule, the exhibition was preserved, but the exhibits were altered in accordance with the ban on depicting living beings. The faces of all figures have been removed, not only of people, but also of animals. The Hall of Fame, which contained portraits of several dozen Mujahideen leaders, disappeared completely. In addition, with rare exceptions, women are no longer allowed in the museum.